Hi, welcome back to the Essential Coaching Skills Podcast. I'm Doug O'Brien. My guest today is Adam Serra. He is the author and CEO of Done For You Closing Agency and the High Ticket Closing Academy. He has had 2 decades of experience closing more than 50 million in high ticket sales throughout his career. Adam's Done For You Closing Agency has helped some of the biggest brands in the high ticket coaching space, including Paul McKenna Training, Mindvalley Inc., Shetty Certification School, and Peter Sage. And while all that's very impressive, I didn't ask him here to talk about that stuff. I asked him to talk about this for you guys, because I don't know about you, but I'm not Paul McKenna and Jay Shetty. I'm just a little guy, and I want people to do this for me. I mean, this is for us. Part of the reason we do the Essential Coaching Skills podcast is to get skills as a coach, but also how do we fill our coaching practice? How do you fill your coaching practice? So we're going to do that today, but also look at high tickets. So from conversation to client, the coach's playbook for selling high ticket offers. And I think you're going to want to stick around. See you in just a minute. You are listening to the Essential Coaching Skills Podcast, a show devoted to uncovering the systems and the secrets that set the best apart, where you learn how to take your coaching clients to the next level, while you grow the coaching practice of your dreams. So sit back and relax, or sit up and get excited. Either way, you might want to pay attention. This could be important. Good morning, Adam.
Morning.
I don't know if it's morning where you are actually, but hi.
Hi.
You're in England, right? So it's morning for me. It's probably afternoon for you at this point in time. But that's not why we asked you here. So, Adam Serra, what the heck? Conversation to client. What is it? What are we talking about here? How do people? What is the coach's playbook for getting high ticket sales offers? But first of all, wait a minute. What is a high ticket sales offer? What is that? Just define that for me.
Yeah, good question. So typically high ticket there's kind of 2 schools of thoughts on this matter, but anything over 2K or anything over 3K would suggest that it's a high ticket offer, and that can go anywhere up to 100K.
Okay. So if I'm a coach and I'm typically getting coach clients to work with me for a month or 2 months at, let's say, $1,000 a month. If I was to say, hey, but you can also pay me a lot more. so that here's an offer that I want you to purchase. I want you to take my high ticket offer of $5,000 for the same period of time. And that's what we're talking about, really, as a high ticket offer that they're offering. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So typically, the clients that I help, that they're charging per session, right? Mm-hmm. So they'll charge anything like $250 or $500 a session, let's say. And my whole philosophy is forget all that. You're not charging what you're worth. You should be charging high ticket. So it should be $5,000 or $10,000 paid up front. You can introduce monthly payment plans like over the duration of the program. But the key thing is to charge what you're worth, which is a high ticket offer.
Okay, cool. So how do you figure out what that is?
It requires a coach or a therapist or a consultant to look at their offer and to segment to basically take their offer and make 3 offers. So you have like the super high ticket, which I would say is like around 10K, which has an element of 1-to-1. Then you have your sort of main offer, which is a 5K offer, which is a group coaching. And then you've got your content only, which you could price anything from, let's say, $700 to $900, which would give you your 3 offers. And now you're geared in terms of selling your offer in the proper structure so that you can get the most of every conversation that you have.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Actually, it's interesting because I used to work for Tony Robbins' organization, and it was pretty well known that people will tend to go for that sweet spot in the middle. They don't They don't want to afford the super expensive one, and the cheap one's too cheap. But I'll go for that middle ground. I can do that one. And most of our sales, vast majority of our sales, were in that middle ground. But it's important to have those other choices. Otherwise, it's not middle; it's only. So that you want to have ones that they can discard and say that's too little or that's too much, and I'll go for that sweet spot. And then sometimes people actually do take the expensive one or the high ticket offer. Let's put it that way. I'll put my own what's the word, beliefs aside, prejudices aside. It's not expensive. It's what you're worth. But the high ticket offer.
Exactly. So that's the first step. And then the next step is to heighten your skills to be able to sell high ticket. And that's essentially what conversation to client is. It's having the adequate skills to be able to sell high ticket, because selling low ticket compared to high ticket is infinitely more difficult, because what you're selling is less transactional. It's the perceived barrier to entry is greater. So that therefore it demands of the actual practitioner, of the coach, to be able to sell better at the highest level. So it needs a more sophisticated way of selling. So that's what the book's about.
Okay. So if you're selling a high ticket offer, you need better skills, basically.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Infinitely more.
I'm not sure that came out exactly right, or at least I didn't hear it exactly right, but yes, that makes sense. So this book is about those skills. What skills those are and how do you get them?
Yeah. So, and if I can just talk on why you need, it's not just the value. Is because coaches and consultants and therapists, they're selling something intangible.
Right. Yeah. Oh, yes.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not selling you a used car and you can say, oh, this is a nice car.
Exactly. Because when you're selling something tangible like a used car, you can say, well, look at it. It has X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
But coaches and consultants, what are they selling? They're selling a promise in the future, transformation, which they cannot touch and see, right?
Yeah.
So that's the other reason as well. So that the fact that you're selling something intangible, and coupled with the high ticket price range, it requires those heightened skills. So, so that's essentially what we're trying to do in the book, is to teach you those essential skills and a methodology. And this is really important, because usually what's out there, what people are immersed in, are inadequate ways of selling that are not suited for the coaching world.
Yeah.
So what the conversation to client does, it introduces something called inverse closing.
Right. So the inverse selling method, I think, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you came from a place where you were selling for somebody else. You were, your bio said that you're $50 million worth of sales. A lot of that came prior to you setting out on your own. Was that a difficult transition for you to set out on your own and be selling your own stuff? Because I know a lot of people have trouble with that. I have trouble with that. I can sell Tony Robbins, I can sell anybody else, but it's, it's harder to sell yourself. There's a little imposter syndrome sometimes with people.
Absolutely. I think a lot of your viewers may resonate with this sense of feeling. No matter how successful you are, if you're working for someone else, it never quite hits the spot. And I was working for the UK's leading therapist. Her name's Marissa Peer. She runs a company. Yeah, she runs a company called RTT, Certification, Rapid Transformational Therapy. I was the head of sales there. I had great success there. I scaled the team from 3 to 100 closers. She was doing multi 8 figures, but I still wasn't 100% fulfilled. I wanted to do my own thing. So I had to spread my wings, and I left, and it was very nerve-wracking to go out on my own, because I was very comfortable. A lot of people around me said, you're crazy for doing this, but I wanted to do something on my own and have my own company and become a sales coach. And And in the book, I describe my very first sale that was like 25K. It nearly broke me, but we got there in the end. But
Yeah.
yes.
And I remember you describing it as kind of a roller coaster experience.
Oh, yeah, indeed.
Because it felt like, oh, here it comes. And
Yes, exactly. And I had to basically put my money where my mouth was. I had to, all of the skills that I developed and my experience, I had to make it work for myself. Because if I couldn't make it work for myself, I wasn't going to be able to make it work for anyone.
Sure.
And luckily, I pulled through.
Yeah, it did. It worked out really well, which is also the feeling I have every time I'm on a roller coaster. It's like, oh, I survived. It was good. It was good. I've survived. Yeah. So, yeah, it's interesting. You just got foggy there a little bit in your camera, but I'll just zoom out a little bit. Maybe that'll be all right. Anyway, so since most people are going to be listening to this podcast, we won't worry about any cameras not working perfectly well, but just say you're not foggy. It's just the camera that's foggy. So that's the important thing. Hey, so what is this inverse selling method?
Yes. So it's called inverse closing because
Inverse closing, sorry.
There's a theme that runs all the way through the methodology and the process, and we're inverting things that we would see in traditional sales. Like, we wouldn't come on a sales call all excited and high pitch and high energy. In fact, we might even come across a bit boring and monotone. We're very detached from the sale. I mean, we don't talk as much. We talk very minimally, in fact, and the prospect does most of the talking, even though we're selling something. So it's a theme that runs all the way through it. The gist of it is this: that in traditional sales, what we find is that we're selling the offer to the prospect. But in inverse closing, what you're doing is you're getting the prospect to sell themselves for the offer.
Okay.
So that's essentially what the philosophy is of inverse closing.
So can you walk us through that? There's 5 phases, if I recall. Right?
Correct.
Investigation
correct. So the first phase is introduction.
Introduction.
Then there's introduction is really essential, because in order to dictate the nature of the conversation, we need to frame the conversation from the outset. Investigation is like your reconnaissance. Before we engage, we want to know what's there and see where what the terrain looks like before we dive deeper. Interpretation is where we engage with the prospect's world.
Mm-hmm.
What we're trying to point here also is I'm a strong believer in a pain-centric conversation.
A pain-centric conversation.
Pain-centric conversation. So the interpretation phase is dominated by that thinking, that we want to look into and explore things that are causing discomfort in the prospect's world.
Okay.
Because essentially it's the pain that makes people move far more than seeking pleasure.
Right.
And then after the interpretation, we have the implication. Essentially, it's the consequence of inaction and action. And then we have the inform. By then, what you're doing here is just presenting the facts of the program, and we're weaving in some persuasion there as well. So that's essentially the 5 phases.
Okay.
And my thinking is that any sales call that does not have those 5 is an incomplete sales call. And there are many reasons for that.
That's really interesting. So one of the things we could learn from your book, I'm assuming then, is how to make sure you have that. Is this, I'm sorry, I haven't really finished reading this book yet. Is it explained in here, the inverse selling? Is it?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. It starts off by what we discussed earlier about defining your offers, and then once we've got that out the way, it's about getting the skills.
Okay, cool. So that's not just your other book that came before. This is this book too.
Yeah.
So when you have a conversation with clients, so what we're really talking about here, this is if you're having a discovery call with a client and you're just cold calling, meeting them for the first time. The introduction is like where you just sort of get to know each other a little bit and what's this all about. Then the investigation is to sort of find their pain points, find what's.
Yeah. So the introduction is actually not about finding out about them.
Okay.
So I have a very different understanding of that. Sort of what you said there kind of is very similar to rapport building.
Yeah.
I have a very different understanding of what rapport building is.
Okay.
So it is not to ask, how are you, and which part of the world are you from, and by the way, oh, I live there and my neighbor's got the same dog as you. It's not that, and that, in my view, really builds sales resistance, because people know what you're doing and it's very insincere. In my understanding, rapport building is to understand the prospect's world as much as they do, or even better. Because once you have that understanding, you become an authority in their world, and then you can lead them to where you want to take them. So that's my understanding of rapport, rather than this kind of pseudo kind of friendship kind of conversation that comes across a bit cheesy for a lot of people.
Okay. Cool. No, I appreciate that. I think that a lot of times, I think that you can be sincere, though, don't you think, Adam, with your rapport building? I mean, I really did grow up in that same neighborhood. How about that? My neighbor does have the same dog as you. That's amazing. How cool. There can be a sincerity there as well, don't you think?
There can be. It's just that the prospect is thinking, did I really get on this call to build a friend?
Right.
That's the problem. It can be sincere, but if I'm the salesperson and I'm talking to the prospect, I know and they know that this is really not important to the conversation. What's really important is, I have a problem. Can you understand it? And can you solve it? That's
cool.
That's the agenda.
Yeah.
All the other stuff is just fluff that seems to get in the way.
Got it. Cool. Got it. So you also talk about how beliefs drive behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe I picked this out of there. And that there are basically 5 beliefs that a prospect has to adopt.
Yes. I mean, we won't have time to go through all of the beliefs, but one very important, I'll just mention one of them for now.
Good. Yeah.
And this is often a good way to lose a sale.
Mm.
And it's to do with identity, that the prospect must believe that they can be part of the solution, that the solution can work for them.
Mm-hmm.
So I always say this to my team in my agency: if you've got a prospect who thinks that the offer is great, they have the funds, they have the time, and they want to do it, you will never close that sale if they have beliefs that are contrary to that sale. So if they don't genuinely believe, even if they've got the money, they've got the 5K or 10K, whatever your offer is, they want to do it, they have the time, even the partner says, yes, go ahead and do it, they won't do it if you don't deal with the beliefs. So if that person has a belief that they can't imagine themselves, let's say, overcoming their anxiety or their phobia, or becoming a greater CEO, if they don't see it up here, you will never get that sale. And that's why it's a part of the inverse closing method, is to address those beliefs, those inner objections, if you like, before dealing with the external objections.
Cool. Sounds like sleight of mouth could be useful there.
Indeed. Yeah.
Just thinking. Hey, so what's an example of a pain-evoking question that you would use in this process?
Okay. So we have a general one that opens up the conversation, and then you can ask a specific one to what we refer to in NLP as chunking down, right?
Mm-hmm.
So my chunking down questions are structured in a way to evoke pain. So I would say something like, when you had X, what did you notice? So when you let's think of an example here. Let's say someone's unhappy at work. So when you wake up in the morning and you don't feel the need to go to work, what do you notice about yourself? So I want a negative response rather than a positive.
Right. Yeah. So I get up in the morning, I feel like, oh God, another day. And I just sort of drag myself out of bed and have a cup of coffee and think about having a second cup of coffee. And
exactly.
Yeah. So that's where you leave it, or is it, oh yeah, it's terrible. Yeah.
And we dig deeper and deeper. So we would talk about, what are the things. So rather than starting the conversation about all that's positive, because it's very easy to talk about what your coaching offer can present to them in terms of the positive outcomes. That's very easy to do that. Before talking about that, one needs to understand what the problem is in order to offer a solution. So in my training sessions with my closers or coaches that learn with me, I always ask them this question: can a problem exist without a solution? And they say, yes, of course. Can a solution exist without a problem? And they say, no, a solution can't exist without a problem. So I say, so the primacy is the problem. If you can identify the problem, the solution comes easy. But talking about a solution without identifying the problem, it weakens the ability for someone to close someone.
Yes. I see that. That's nice. That's good. So when you're doing all this, rapport is, so my way of thinking, my experience over the years is you must have rapport. If they start thinking you of as a used car salesman or whatever, our previous example notwithstanding, but the typical feel like I'm being sold. How do you balance that sort of empathy and rapport with being the authority? How do you maintain that sort of balance of that situation?
Yeah.
Asking painful questions.
That's a really good question. So that's the challenge in finding a way to sell these days. So you've got the ABC, like always be closing approach. And then you've got the sales is service. And I discuss this in the book as well. They have their merits and they have their negative point. So with always be closing, it is so high pressure, it alienates the prospect, you're almost bullying them, but it has one thing: it has authority. You're able to guide them. You're leading the conversation. The challenge with sales as a service is that it loses that sense of authority. It's like, yes, what else do you have? Do you have any other questions? You're lowering your status down. But it feels good for the prospect, right? Where ABC doesn't feel good for the prospect, but it has authority, sales as a service attitude to sales loses authority, loses control, but it feels good for the prospect. What inverse closing does is that it harmonizes the two. It takes the control and the authority from always be closing and takes the feel good factor for the prospect. And that's what I've managed to do in the book.
That's great. That's really cool. That's really fantastic. That's really useful. And when we're talking about coaching, we're talking about really, like you said, it's an intangible offer that we're making. We're selling a promise. We're selling a promise. We're also selling us. It's a relationship, unless you're selling somebody else, like you were selling Melissa Pierce before, and I was selling Tony Robbins before. But if it's us that we're selling, you have to have that authority. You also have to have this tangible. You have to make the prospect believe that this promise is going to happen and that can happen, and they're the ones that it can happen. How do coaches get better at helping prospects visualize that future? How do you get it to a place where they can actually believe it? How can they visualize it and see it as something that's...
I will revert back to the third phase of the inverse closing method, which is the interpretation.
Okay.
The interpretation phase is all about trying to find out what are the facts in the prospect's life that is causing friction. Once you put your finger on that wound, something happens in the mind of the prospect. The person who's identified that becomes their authority. And once you become authority in their world, then you can become an authority in where you should take them. So essentially, that's your solution, your offer.
Okay.
And the way to make them really believe that is to get them to imagine what the consequence. So this is the fourth stage of the inverse closing method, which is the implication. You have to get them to imagine, A, what happens if one continues in this manner, and they really have to see it. And B, what happens if you do take action, and what the world looks like, how much relief it has, how much more confidence you have, how much more energy you have, how much time you save, etc. That's how you get them to really believe in the solution at hand.
Nice. Got it. Cool. Because it's interesting. I've been teaching stories and storytelling for a long time, and that a lot of times stories can do that. If you have a story, really, they can see it, they can hear it, they can feel it. There's evidence that if I really tell a good story about skydiving, then parts of the brain that you would be lit up if you were actually doing that, light up in your brain, that it becomes a visceral, real thing for you. Do you do a lot of that in your work? Do you do a lot of storytelling and visualizations like that?
Something very similar. However, it is based on the same principle. So when you use stories, you want to be subtle, and you want to avoid being direct by telling someone something, but you embed it in a story.
Right.
That concept is very in tune with the inverse closing method.
Cool.
When we are practicing the inverse closing method, subtlety is key. It's extremely important. So yeah, absolutely. It's very, very similar in the way that we approach. The reason subtlety is very important is because if you can get the prospect to imagine in their own mind what you want them to imagine, it becomes their own idea.
Yeah.
Rather than, so I talk about this in the book, telling is not selling, or selling is not telling. So if a prospect has a problem, someone practicing inverse closing cannot, it's almost like an illegal move to say, oh, you have this problem. The skill and the objective is to get them to say it and then acknowledge it.
Yeah.
It requires a lot of skill and practice.
So how does somebody start doing that? Because I will tell you something, Adam. Sounds hard. This sounds hard. It's going. Most of the people listening, I don't want to tell them what they are, but a lot of people listening to this thing love coaching. This is something they're very passionate about. They're good at it. They're really good coaches. They don't want to be a salesperson. They don't want to have to do this stuff. It's like, this is the hard stuff. How do you make it not so hard? How do you make it so that we can do all that practice that you just said and get better at this? How is it even possible?
Yes. Well, the first thing is that anyone can be good at sales. Anyone can be good at sales. Anyone can. Because my understanding of sales is that it's not an innate quality, a trait. It's following a process. Now, that said, to master it is something else. And that requires a mentor. That requires someone to provide that feedback loop. So just to give you an indication, in my coaching sessions, I will have a coach. They will speak to a prospect, record that call, bring it to my coaching session, and I would deconstruct every kind of sentence, every question that coach asks. And I will grill them and ask them, well, what was the point of that? Did you miss this? Did you hear this? It's only then can you actually master it. However, just having the process will elevate your sales to a considerable amount.
Okay. Cool. So you've worked also with, these big name guys, Jay Shetty, Certification School, Peter Sage, Mindvalley. What kind of things can just little folks like us, like me, like our listeners, learn from those big, like, corporate monsters? How can their strategy, are they the same? Are they the same strategies?
Well, the way that my agency supports those giants is that we do a done for you offer. So my sales agency basically sells on their behalf so that they don't have to. See, there will be a stage. So my goal is to do this, is to elevate the selling ability of coaches so that they become a victim of their own success. Because if you can't sell, your business isn't growing.
Exactly.
That's the ultimate, right?
That is the bottom line.
I want them to get to a stage where, Adam, I'm a victim of my own success. I'm getting these people on these calls, I'm closing them, and now I don't have time to coach.
Yeah.
Right? That's what I want to achieve for them. That's why I wrote the book. And when you get to that stage, there's also a solution that you can outsource it to an agency like mine that will do the closing for you using the method that you feel to be proficient. So that's a long-term solution.
Right. That's really good. Good. So yeah, and again, I'm just thinking about myself and my own personal history. I was very good I was sales manager for Tony Robbins' organization. I could coach people on how to do it and get them out there and doing it. And I was very proficient at that. When I came to selling myself, it was not quite so easy. What mental shift helps a coach go from dreading sales to enjoying it?
Firstly, we've all been brought up that and been influenced by environment that sales is manipulation. That's the first thing. Yeah. A lot of coaches that I help, they're a bit torn because they're in the industry of helping people, but the mechanism to help them is something called sales, and they have this negative reaction to it. They think it's manipulation.
Yeah.
But sales doesn't have to be that way. You can actually get a sale and have the will of the prospect and the will of the salesperson or the coach who's selling be aligned. And that's what my understanding of a sale is.
Nice.
In the subconscious, we have this idea that it's just the will of the closer that gets fulfilled in making a sale, right? There's something twisted about it, which isn't true. The other thing is, for them to really excel, they have to make a distinction. That often coaches can conflate the two. They conflate their subject knowledge, whether they're a life coach or a business coach or whatever it may be, with the knowledge of selling. They assume that if I'm a kick-ass coach within my speciality, therefore I can sell. But that logically does not follow, because the body of selling, the body of knowledge for selling, is a complete distinctive body of knowledge compared to the coach of your knowledge of coaching. So they really need to make that shift.
Yeah.
Because if they can't, they're just going to go around in circles. So that's really important. The other thing is as well is that they have to understand that you are not selling your time. So this is where coaches and therapists go wrong. So I had one particular client of mine, and she was charging like $200 or $100, $150 for a breathwork session. And I said, well, that's too little. I said, you need to charge at least $1,000. She was like, Adam, $1,000? How can I charge $1,000 for 1 hour? How can I charge it? I said, you're mistaken. Your equation is wrong. They're not paying you for your time. They're paying you for your wisdom and your experience. how long have you got to this stage where you've become a top breathwork coach? Oh, Adam, I've been doing this for 20 years. Well, that is the experience that you have. It is not the minutes in that hour that they're paying you for. It's the experience behind it. So those kind of shifts, and there are some others that I go through in the book, but those are the ones that I would say that stick out.
Yeah, no, that's really critical. I mean, I used to get the same thing when I was a piano player. I'd show up to play at a wedding or a funeral or a bar mitzvah or whatever, and people say, you charge, this is a while ago now, so so it won't sound like that. You charge $200 for a night of performance? I said, yeah. I said, why? You just show up and sit down and play. How is that possibly worth $200? It's like, well, it's the years I spent learning how to play and mastering the stuff, and all the millions of dollars I spent, but exaggerating slightly, on lessons and university and all that sort of stuff in order to get to this level where I can just sit down and play. That's what you're paying for. That's the expertise. Cool.
Precisely.
So it's all here in this book.
Yeah, it's all. I'm literally drawing back the curtain. Everything that I've done in the last 20 years, all the mistakes I've done, all the things I've optimized, right?
Yeah. And by the way, that's huge, to learn from one's mistakes. I was talking about this just the other day with somebody. I said, how much of what you know to do as an expert coach or an expert anything came from making mistakes? What do you know to do that came from making mistakes? And they said, oh God, like 90% of what I know to do came from making mistakes. I said, okay. And part of also being an expert is knowing what not to do. So exactly. How much of what knowing not to do came from making mistakes? And they said, oh God, probably 95% of what I know not to do came from making mistakes. I said, so you're telling me that basically, if you do the math, 97.5% of what makes you an expert came from you making mistakes. I said, yeah. Cool.
Exactly. Yeah.
So if we can learn from somebody else's mistakes, that gets you there a lot faster. So thank you for doing all that groundwork for us.
Thank you.
Well, that's great. This is a really valuable book. And by the way, I also listened to a bit of it, and you have a really great voice for your audiobook version of it. So that's really a nice thing as well. So I've been enjoying both reading it and listening to it. So that's a great thing you have. What if people want to get hold of you and find out more about Adam Serra and the conversation to client sort of stuff that you offer? How would they do that?
Oh, they can just visit my website, adamserra.com. I've got all of the books on there. I've got our Done For You offer there, our academy there. They can just visit that. Everything's on there.
Oh, beautiful. That makes it simple. adamserra.com. Well, great. I appreciate you being here, Adam. And for all those of you listening, please, if you haven't done so already, like it, subscribe it. That helps us more than I can really explain in words. It's just fantastic. So thank you all for being here. And Adam, it's a great joy to talk with you. And thank you so much for this contribution to my coaching, because I'm going to take full advantage of this. And it's great. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
So let me turn on the outro.
This has been the Essential Coaching Skills Podcast. Thank you for being here. It's a pleasure seeing you again. Hope to see you again real soon. Come back next week when we have another gripping and exciting episode of the Essential Coaching Skills Podcast. And if you want to, you can find out more about us, each and every one of us, at essentialcoachingskills.com. Thanks.